I have loved the X-Men as long as I've known them. Whether that's as a cartoon, an action figure, or a comic book, I've always been drawn to them. And why not? Who hasn't felt like an isolated freak at some point in their lives, even if they didn't have superpowers? Everyone struggles with acceptance, whether it's regarding their body, their sexuality, their religion, their personality, their ethnicity, their family, on and on. And the X-Men help show us that, yes, we are different. But that's not a bad thing. We can choose to overcome our differences and work together to make the world a better place. That message has been at the core of the X-Men's narrative since Stan Lee and Jack Kirby first created them. But it was author Chris Claremont who really made it sing. In 1975, along with artist David Cockrum, Marvel published Giant-Size X-Men #1 and changed the world. Claremont and Cockrum built a team of international mutants that the X-Men had, frankly, never been before. Gone are the days of 5 white kids from America who look mostly human. Now we have Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Wolverine, Thunderbird, Banshee, and Sunfire. Many of them from different countries, and all of them from varying backgrounds. While some wouldn't stay for long, many of these characters have gone on to become some of the most influential in not just X history, but comic book history. But all good things must end. In 1990, for varying reasons, Chris Claremont left the franchise that he spent 16 years shaping. This is where I came in as a reader, during Scott Lobdell's run of Uncanny X-Men. And as much as I loved it then, and still do, really, I always heard the legends about Claremont's run. I mean, he made almost every character that mattered. He architected some of the biggest X-Men stories and had one of the longest runs on a comic book. From my perspective, Claremont was the X-Men's god. So, thinking to tighten the X-line and renew interest in the team, Marvel invited Claremont back in 2000 for a rebranding of the books called Revolution. Claremont wrote both Uncanny X-Men and its younger sibling, X-Men. Rather than return to form, though, he pushed forward instead. Claremont didn't like revisiting old characters and themes. He wanted to keep moving. And for fans expecting old Claremont, Revolution was not their cup of tea. I tend to agree with Claremont. Never move backwards in your narrative. Always move forward. I liked the character changes he brought. I liked the new characters he introduced. And while the tone is bizarre, I like that he tried. Perhaps he failed, but he tried. X-Men Black Sun is set during this era. I'm not exactly sure why it exists. I thought for sure that I'd be able to find some kind of interview with Claremont detailing how this particular book came to be, but nope, I got nothing. Even with my Google Foo, all I found were tons of for sale copies, a few other review sites, but no insight into the background of this thing. Was this an X-Men story that he planned but didn't have room for in the 2 main books? Did editorial just want another X book on the shelf in November of 2000? Or rather 5 books, I guess, because they published the whole series over the course of November. I know that Marvel likes to take advantage of months with 5 Wednesdays in them, so was Black Sun meant to fill a publishing role? Or was this book meant to lead to something else? Perhaps the fulfillment of a character long relegated to second-tier status? I can't find an official answer. So we're going to find our own. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown Episode 3, X-Men Black Sun. The saga opens in Kitty Pryde's hometown of Chicago, Illinois, where she's out for a walk. The cold weather perfectly matches her mood. She's subconsciously angry and she wants to fight something. Thankfully, the universe provides as a demonic creature called a Nagarai pounces at her. The X-Men in general and Shadowcat in particular have a long history with the demons and their attempts to invade our realm of existence. The Nagarai are fast, strong, and merciless, armed with teeth, claws, and a bludgeoning tail. But Kitty isn't unarmed either. As part of her growth during the Revolution era, Kitty began to carry around the broken-off claws of Wolverine. Despite being bone, the claws are still razor-sharp and she fights back with gusto. The Nagarai appears to have the upper hand until Kitty phases its leg into the ground. Writhing in pain and immobilized, Kitty now has all the time she needs to take off its head. The scenario finished, the hologram fades, and the Danger Room, the X-Men's high-tech advanced training area, reports her score. Compared to her past performances, the Danger Room rates her performance as subpar. There's a lot being established here. First off is the fact that Kitty is fighting alone. A longtime member of the X-Men, Kitty has long ago earned the trust and respect of her teammates. But she's alone here, and Claremont makes sure to tell us that she's angry. She wants a fight. This is fairly unusual for Kitty, who is normally a pretty positive persona. She wants to be alone to work out her aggression, but why is she angry? Secondly, Kitty chooses to fight against one of the Nagarai. This isn't the first time she's gone up against them, and that's Claremont's point. Kitty encountered a Nagarai in Uncanny X-Men number 143 and barely survived. But that fight is also considered by many to be the moment when Kitty became an actual member of the X-Men. The fight here in Black Sun is meant to not only show how far Shadowcat has come as a fighter, but foreshadow things to come. I didn't mention it at the start of the issue, but Tom Derenick pencils this issue, inked by Sean Parsons and with colors by Tom Smith. Derenick does a good job in this fight overall. Kitty moves fluidly and with grace. She looks confident and sure of herself, definitely older and more skilled than previously shown. The Nagarai is basically a demonic interpretation of the Alien franchise's Xenomorph, and Derenick sticks with the theme. The only weird downside to me is that Kitty is struck by the demon's tail at one point and is launched backwards. Despite this, the shoulder and back of her leather jacket are shredded. It's a small error, but given that Claremont makes a point of highlighting Kitty's error in being hit, it just stands out even more. Needing to wind down, Kitty showers and reflects on her life. The Xavier Mansion used to feel like her home, but right now it doesn't. So much has changed with the team so quickly that Kitty isn't sure of her place in it. She didn't even ask any of her friends what they thought about her new haircut. Her musings are interrupted by the doorbell and a package delivery. She signs for it, redirecting her anger at the interruption, and lays down for a nap. That's why Kitty doesn't notice the box glow red or the demonic visage of Belasco appearing above it. Who is Belasco? Well, long story short, Belasco used to be the demonic king of a dimension called Limbo. Like its name implies, Limbo exists between realities, touching all at once but remaining pointedly its own realm. A powerful sorcerer in his own right, Belasco has long worked to either gain power, to destroy the Earth, or to summon the Cthulhu-like elder gods so that they can A. grant him power, or B. destroy the Earth. Yeah, he's a pretty one-note guy. Belasco is most famous amongst X-fans for kidnapping Colossus's younger sister, Illyana, after which he stole a portion of her soul and began her education in spellcasting. This is all chronicled in the 4-issue Magic miniseries from 1983, and it's a pretty good read. Illyana eventually escaped, but the strange nature of Limbo's existence aged her quickly. Despite being gone for seconds, when Illyana returned to our world, she was a young woman. In time, she would go on to depose Belasco and become ruler of Limbo in her own right. This lasted until her death in 1989's Inferno crossover that rocked the X-books. The fact that he's back here isn't a good thing. After the image fades, Kitty is shocked awake by another Nagarai bursting through her window. Despite her shock, Kitty reacts quickly, beheading the Nagarai in one blow. Angry that this is what her life consists of, Kitty looks out the window and is horrified. The moon, now a dusky, dull, sickly red color, hangs low in the sky, and huge chunks of it are missing. Piled around the Xavier Institute are human skulls, hundreds upon thousands of them. There's a huge mountain of them that towers over the school. Knowing the number of villains that could alter her perceptions or cast illusions, Kitty doesn't accept that this could possibly be real. She puts on her X-Men uniform and ventures out, passing by Captain America's corpse. The sounds of battle draw her near, and she's relieved to find Nightcrawler and Colossus not only alive, but still fighting. She asks about the rest of the X-Men, and Colossus states that they're all that's left. If she wants to find the rest, she should look around them. At the skulls. She joins the fight then, but is surprised to find her ability to phase through things ineffective. These Nagarai are able to adapt to their powers on the fly, forcing the X-Men to rely on teamwork and skill. But even that isn't enough. The Nagarai shrug off their blows and grab Kitty. Bending her backward, she prepares for her spine to snap. But a well-placed lightning bolt downs the demon. Storm, backed up by the sonic screaming Banshee and the atomic fire of Sunfire, joins the fray. The five manage to fight off the demons long enough to regroup. Needing a plan, no one argues when Shadowcat suggests that they retreat and regroup at the mansion. The mansion's automated defenses are activated, helping gain the X-Men some more time. Nightcrawler explains that no one really knows what happened to get them to this point. Nagarai cairns, the skull statues that they breached dimensions with, appeared all over the world and opened. The Nagarai swarmed out and quickly overran the world's armies, then the world's superheroes. As far as they know, they may be the only humans left alive. Kitty can't believe Kurt's defeated attitude. There must be a way for them to fight back. He says that there might be and suggests a counterspell. This reads as weird to Kitty. One of the changes that Claremont made during Revolution was for Kurt to become a priest. Knowing this, Kitty asks why a Catholic priest is advocating for blood magic. Kurt reminds her that his foster mother was a sorceress, as was his longtime lover Amanda Sefton. He doesn't approve of blood magic, but with the church gone and humanity nearly destroyed, desperate times and all that. Kitty then asks how the Nagarai could do this. They were deposed years ago by another race of demons called the Rutai. Storm says that the Rutai are nothing. Sunfire then adds that the Nagarai are all. Okay, we're breezing right past that strange exchange. Kitty asks what she needs to do now. First, they make a pentagram, one X-Man at each point, with Kitty in the center. Kurt says the spell needs the blood of the innocent, meaning Kitty, and I have to wonder exactly what that means. What makes Kitty, who feels particularly jaded and angry in this story, an innocent? Is it just because she's never killed someone? I don't know. Anyway, they all add a small drop of blood into a where did that come from chalice from which Kitty must now drink. Despite her instincts buzzing, Kitty trusts in her teammates. She drinks from the chalice. A blast of pure power erupts from Kitty, burning away the spells that surround the X-Men, and revealing them to be Nagarai. A vision of each X-Man appears next to a demon, and their essences switch. The X-Men, Storm, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Banshee, and Sunfire, are now trapped in the frozen bodies of the Nagarai. But this also means that the Nagarai have possession of the X-Men's bodies on Earth. Still reeling, Kitty can only watch as Belasco appears and begins to congratulate himself on another job well done. Using these X-Men, he will create 5 bloodstones from their souls, thus allowing his master's entry to Earth. The room shifts, revealing that Kitty has been transported to Limbo. This whole scenario was a lie. Except for Belasco and the soul switching. That crap was all too real. Needing a setting to house the bloodstones, Belasco reaches into Kitty's chest and pulls out her soul, which he then shapes into the setting, complete with the first bloodstone. Well, this battle for the fate of the Earth went south pretty quickly. As Belasco continues to gloat, a cloaked, armored woman wielding a flaming sword suddenly appears. Calling herself Magic, with a K at the end, just so you know how it's spelled, the woman fights Belasco but is overpowered. Only when Shadowcat joins in does Belasco retreat, no longer needing to waste time with them. He has what he needs. Magic and Kitty regroup, finally noticing the enormous Nagarai cairn in the room. Magic explains that, thanks to Limbo's proximity to all realities, if the Nagarai can take over Limbo, they'll have access to every reality. They will kill everything. That, of course, is when a new Nagarai appears in a burst of light. And we end issue 1. So I didn't pause to break things down for that back half because it all flows together pretty well. The skull vision illusion is a great way for Claremont to establish the stakes here. If Belasco wins, this is what the Nagarai will do to Earth. Heavy stuff. Having Kitty find Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Storm first is also a good move. She's lived with and fought beside these three for years, so she trusts and believes in them completely. I'm not sure why Claremont chose to put Banshee and Sunfire here, as Kitty has no real relationship with those two. But Claremont does establish a good reason for why Kitty follows Kurt's advice, even as odd and unnatural feeling as it is to her. I don't quite get the spell that she's a part of or how it works. I mean, did the spell kidnap the X-Men involved in this first, allowing them to then copy their basic appearances for the getting Kitty to drink the blood part of this plan? Because then the X-Men's bodies just appear, which the Nagarai then possess? Or do the Nagarai just inhabit the illusions, thus allowing them to control the X-Men back on Earth? And why are the Nagarai-possessed X-Men unable to move? I know that the allure of magic in storytelling is that it's esoteric, and it uses symbolism to shape reality. But how does drinking Nagarai blood in a pentagram, A, burn away illusions, which seems like a bad idea on the Nagarai's part, B, then either cast the illusion of the X-Men or straight up kidnap them in costume from whatever they were doing, C, swap their souls for the Nagarai, and then D, keep the possessed Nagarai frozen and immobile. There is no symbolism here. There's nothing that feels like it should lead to summoning the X-Men or possessing their bodies or anything. I bamfin hate magic. But, fine, that's just how this works. I get it. Belasco pulls out Kitty's soul, but she survives, which is also weird. This is another point of, I don't know how magic works for me. Magic outright asks how Kitty is able to move her body with no soul, and she just shrugs it off. I mean, is a soul necessary for physical movement? How is Kitty different now that she's sans soul? I mean, in traditional vampire lore, lacking a soul makes you cold-hearted and selfish, unable to realize how your actions harm others. But what does that mean here? And if it has no impact on Kitty, then why do we even bring it up? After pulling out her soul, Belasco even comments that soon she will beg for death. So no soul does not equal death, but then what the crap is magic talking about? Speaking of, we do have a new magic introduced here. Both Belasco and Kitty refer to her as Ilyana, but she never actually answers to that name. If this is Ilyana, who did take up the name Magic when she joined the New Mutants, she is really playing it close to the vest, and if it's not, well then who the hell is she? I'm a bit torn on her overall design. I mean, I love the golden horns, the white cloak, the armor. I think in general she looks pretty cool. But it's also a sexy armor, meaning it offers little protection while revealing a lot of skin. She looks less like a mystical defender and more like an angelic warrior succubus. Before moving on, I'd like to comment on the art again, because this book just looks not good enough. Derenick does a good job overall. The characters are in costume, the fight scenes are easy to follow, and he even makes sure to keep Kitty's claw in the same hand throughout. I specifically went back to see if she was switching it between panels or something. So I kept flipping through the book until it hit me. It's the colors. In the opening, everything is subdued. It's all grays, blues, blacks, and whites. Nothing stands out or pops, it's just flat. And the use of those colors doesn't help to set a tone either. We can then contrast that to Magic's fight with Belasco, which has these bright greens and blues and deep purples, and there's the white and gold of her costuming, and then you've got Belasco's just basically red. It's just a mess. And while the coloring of the effects has fades and gradients, everything else is just a flat color. It's not often that I notice coloring in a comic book. Much like inking or the soundtrack to a good movie, when done right, the audience shouldn't notice these things. But this feels very unpolished to me. Issue 2 brings a creative change to Black Sun. You see, while Claremont receives most of the credit for the creation of the second generation, he certainly wasn't the only creator who had a hand in them. And in order to both highlight those creators as well as recognize their contributions, each issue of this book has a different scripter. The basic plot? That's all Claremont, baby. But each individual issue, that's another Legendary X writer. First up is author Len Wein. I tend to associate Wein more with Wolverine, as he co-created the character with Roy Thomas, John Romita Sr., and Herb Trimpe. However, Wein also helped conceptualize, with a lot of work done by artist Dave Cockrum, characters like Nightcrawler, Storm, Thunderbird, and Colossus. I didn't know this, but Wein also plotted the first few issues of the New Team's adventures, which were then scripted by Claremont. That's pretty awesome, and I feel super bad that I've given Claremont almost sole credit over the years for how great those characters are. And I'm not discounting the decades of work that Claremont did, making these new creations into some of the most famous characters in comics. But without Dave Cockrum and Len Wein, they wouldn't exist at all. So first, thank you, Mr. Wein. Now let's break this thing down. Magic disposes of the Nagarai demon that appeared at the end of the last issue easily, her soul sword cleaving it in two. She checks on Kitty, who is doing all that bad given that she's soulless. She's more confused than anything. Belasco specifically referred to her as her cat's paw before he fled. And what did he mean by that? Magic explains. Way back in Uncanny X-Men number 160, the X-Men came to Limbo to rescue young Illyana. During the adventure, Kitty was imprisoned in an eldritch crystal, and Belasco removed her skeleton. An elderly Storm from an alternate reality who had studied under Belasco, but then betrayed him, restored the skeleton to Kitty. In doing so, her skeleton became etched with a spell of dominion that had been hidden in her crystal prison. From then on, Belasco could summon Kitty whenever he wanted. God, I bamfin' hate magic. Was Belasco planning this move just in case his first scheme failed? And if so, why wait 18 publishing years to do so? And if Claremont didn't plan this way back when, and it's all just made-up mumbledy-jumbo, why go through this complicated way? I mean, I'd have bought that the paperwork that Kitty signed last issue had a "I'm cool with being transported to Limbo" clause, allowing for her abduction. Why the crystal and stealing her skeleton and just... Does anyone care? Does this detail add anything to the narrative? No, not at all. This is bad magic and weak storytelling. Magic, the character, reiterates the stakes and Kitty is down. But, sans a soul, Kitty can't return to Earth. She would just be dead. Nor should she stay in the corrupting influence of Limbo for too long. Magic offers her sword as a Pokeball. She'll store Kitty's body, I guess, inside the sword until she can rejoin her with her soul. With little choice, Kitty does so. Glad we spent the whole first issue of this series doing a study of modern-day Kitty Pryde and where she's at mentally, only to write her out of the book. Cool. Cool. Belasco then appears, one part gloating, one part trying to scare Magic off. She sweeps her sword through him, but is disappointed to learn he's only a projection. Belasco then casts an illusion, showing Magic what the world will become once he and his masters are done with it. We're returned to Kitty's nightmare, the moon destroyed, the mountain of human skulls. Magic snaps, crying out a scream to summon her strength. With one swing and in a burst of light, she casts the illusion aside, swearing to stop him. While the dialogue is fairly cliched, I like what the scene reveals about the mysterious Magic. The first thing is that she has a hard edge. She didn't hesitate to kill Belasco when he appears, something that even most X-Men wouldn't do. The second is that she's powerful enough to dispel Belasco's illusion, so she ain't no magical pushover. Back on Earth in Hong Kong, one Colonel Wei has been summoned to the scene of a murder. I don't know if colonels actively investigate crimes in Hong Kong or not, so that seems weird to me. The colonel explains that, with this murder, this brings the total of deaths to 169, or 13 times 13, a number of great magical power. The detective is shocked to find a small cairn glowing with sickly green energy inside. Behind him, Colonel Way begins to transform, his body turning gray, his limbs stretching, 8 eyes sprouting from his head. This isn't Colonel Way. It's Pilgrim, a sorcerer of the Rutai, last seen in X-Men number 75. The Rutai, who were mentioned in passing last issue, are an offshoot of the Nagarai. The Nagarai used the Rutai as slave labor, their brutal strength overpowering them. But the Rutai are smart and naturally connected to magic. When Wolverine assaulted the Nagarai in Wolverine Annual 1995, he unintentionally inspired them to rebel, leading to an uprising. Having overthrown their masters, the Rutai, in the form of Pilgrim, then began to visit Earth, their own quest for blood, knowledge, and dominance driving them. The X-Men fought them back in X-Men number 75, but Pilgrim managed to teleport out and ended up in Hong Kong. As if this narrative wasn't both too complicated and reliant on old history, now we have this. Joy. Back at the plot, magic spells have revealed the details of Belasco's plan. Having used Kitty's soul to create a receptacle, he now needs the souls from 4 of the original X-Men. We're told 5, but he already has Kitty's soul from issue 1, so there. To that end, he's targeted Phoenix and Beast, Archangel, Iceman, and Polaris. Colossus for Jean, Nightcrawler gets Beast, Storm hunts Archangel, Sunfire is after Iceman, and Banshee stalks Polaris. Thunderbird the First, who died on the second generation's second mission, isn't available because, he's dead. And apparently even Belasco realizes how dangerous it would be to try for Wolverine. Because Wolverine totally won't care that you're targeting and abusing his closest friends. What a great move, Belasco. While I like the pairings, I'm still a little annoyed. I mean, why does Belasco need the souls of the original X-Men? Why does that matter? And where's his cutoff point for what counts as an original X-Man? Because while Polaris definitely predates the second generation, she's also not one of the original 5 founding members. And on that note, why not use the imprisoned souls of the X-Men he has? I mean, their bodies are just floating there in Nagarai bodies. Like, what is this? Like, they just get shoved in a closet somewhere? And why use X-Men souls at all? Do normal human souls, which I'm sure he could snag a couple before the magic stops him, not work in this spell? Are mutant souls better than human souls for summoning Cthulhu-like monster gods? I bamfin' hate magic. Anyways, magic hones in on one X-Man in particular. She may not be able to save all of the X-Men, and that's some solid positive thinking there, Magic, so she really only needs to stop the Nagarai. So we then join Warren Worthington III, the high-flying Archangel, as he soars above the woods of Connecticut. Archangel is, well, I can't think of a better way to say this than stalking his sometimes girlfriend Psylocke. She's out enjoying a car ride with Thunderbird. No, not the dead Thunderbird, but the newest X-Man, Neil Shara, who has taken the codename Thunderbird. The pair are out enjoying some nature with the wind in their faces and just each other's company. They speed past a secluded research facility that hides a deadly secret. When Pilgrim journeyed to Earth, he brought several Rutai with him, and they're commonly called mongrels. They kind of look like dog versions of Pilgrim, but they are sentient and can speak. While intelligent, the mongrels are more the warriors, the physical force of the Rutai. The one left on Earth has been held here since its capture, but not for much longer. A Nagarai cairn appears, and the mongrel impales itself upon it, summoning Pilgrim. So Pilgrim's plan, so far, is to murder 169 people, thereby charging a cairn in Hong Kong. This creates a new cairn right next to the mongrel, which I could see being part of the spell, sure, with the intent of transporting Pilgrim to that location? Why does Pilgrim need to be in Connecticut right there and right now? And I know he needs to be there to tie into what's going on with the X-Men, but how does he know that? Pilgrim's been hanging out in China since X-Men 75. How does he know what's going on at all? Much like Belasco's plan, the timing here seems either really coincidental or haphazardly lucky. Back to the X-Men. Archangel strafes the car, forcing Neil to pull over. Unsure of why Archangel is doing this, Neil creates a shield of superheated plasma, blocking his opponent. This gives Betsy a chance to swat at Archangel with her telekinesis. Warren and Betsy start arguing over their relationship, or lack thereof. Warren is jealous of Betsy hanging out with Neil, and Betsy resents his lack of trust in her. As they fight, Magic teleports in with a sudden but too late warning. The Nagarai-possessed Storm flies in and starts throwing down lightning. She knocks out Psylocke first, a tactically solid move. While she hunts down Archangel, Thunderbird misunderstanding fights with Magic. Her blast was meant for Pilgrim, but Pilgrim knows better than to deal with this and runs out on the heroes. He isn't here for them and he just moves on. Magic and Thunderbird, though, follow close behind. Archangel's training and experience allows him to maintain some distance and study Storm. He can tell that she's either possessed or an imposter, but he can't risk her being harmed as Pilgrim attacks her. Storm has no concern for him, though, and she uses her winds to slam him into the ground. We then get a three-way battle between Archangel, Storm, and Pilgrim, ending only when Storm flash freezes the area. We get a brief scuffle as Thunderbird joins the fray, but it's pointless. While Pilgrim and Thunderbird argue, Storm manages to create a new bloodstone from Warren's soul, leaving him comatose on the ground. Pilgrim teleports out, no longer needing a cairn, as does Storm, leaving Magic to Pokeball Archangel and I guess team up with Thunderbird. And Psylocke, but I think she's unconscious off in the snow somewhere. I feel like Claremont and Wine were trying to make a really tense fight here, as the battle constantly shifts between Storm, the X-Men, and Pilgrim. But things happen so quickly, and the characters are generally so unlikable in this, that I just can't care. And I love Archangel and Psylocke. Like, in the 90s, Warren and Betsy were my ship, right? Scott and Jean? Nah. Rogue and Gambit? Lame. But Archangel and Psylocke, two of the coolest looking, most damaged, most changed X-Men managing to find some solace with each other? That's awesome! But Marvel didn't seem to agree, as both characters fell out of the spotlight in the mid-90s, and it took years for them to recover. And this kind of crap storytelling right here sure as hell didn't help. And it's so cliche that it's not even interesting. Warren is a jealous stalker. Psylocke appears like a cheating weakling. I mean, she's probably the most skilled in combat out of the three X-Men here, but she plays no role in the fight. Thunderbird is either clueless or overeager, coming off like a puppy. All the personalities feel flat, the dialogue is boring and uninspired, barely in character, and this is just generally non-exciting. Boring. Boring is how you say non-exciting, Ben. I did enjoy the Nagarai Storm being able to cut loose in the fight. The whole point of this series is to celebrate the second generation, right? But those characters are all possessed by demons, so we don't get to interact with them as characters, just powers. And seeing Storm flood the area, then freeze it all, is pretty dang cool. I have to admit that I also like seeing Archangel outsmart Storm, as it's really easy to underestimate him based on his powers. But this issue is supposed to be Storm's. It even calls her out specifically on the cover. The things that make Storm cool aren't her powers or how effective they are in a fight. We've seen a years-long plotline with Storm that proves it previously in Uncanny X-Men, but it's her character, and that part of her is absent here. Whew, this is getting me riled up. Let's move on to issue 3 before I burst into flame. I'm kind of skeptical going into this issue despite the fact that it'll heavy feature 3 of my favorite mutants, Iceman, Polaris, and Sunfire. The reason that I'm nervous is because this issue was scripted by Roy Thomas. Thomas is a comic book veteran, having written for both DC and Marvel since the 1960s. I know him best for a long run on the Avengers, but I've never actually read anything that he's written. At all. When I looked into his X-Men related background for this, I was shocked to discover that he wrote X-Men from issue 20 to 43, and then again a year later, issues 55 to 66, and that those issues are pretty well regarded for the era that they came from. I'll fully admit my Uncanny collection only goes back to around the 140s, so I'm a good distance away from Thomas's work. This'll be my first experience reading his stuff, so yeah, I'm a bit nervous. Issue 3 opens with another Nagarai attacking from its cairn, but this time Thunderbird blasts it back. We spend the next couple of pages basically recapping the plot. Of interest to me is that Magic must have teleported them between issues because they're at an Xavier Mansion facsimile in Limbo. Magic leaves Psylocke inside to recover, tells Thunderbird about Belasco's plan, and then tasks him with guarding the cairn against insertions. She needs to return to Earth and try again to foil Belasco's servants. It's 5 pages of in case you skipped the last 2 issues, and it's hard to fault him for it. Yeah, to us it's pointless as we just read all of this, but it is possible that this was someone's first comic. If that was me, I'd appreciate the catch-up. And to be fair, Thomas's narration as a new Nagarai comes through is great. It's epic, frightening, and it sets a dark tone. That tone is then blasted apart by new artist Carl Waller, who inked his own stuff. While the demon is scary looking, the landscape is an idyllic, brightly lit forest. With Thunderbird's unfinished costume of yellow and red, his energy blasts, and Magic's gold and white, everything here just looks too bright and cheery. Thomas does answer my question regarding why the original X-Men's souls are necessary for the spell. It's the most unoriginal answer possible, and it's just for revenge. That's all. No actual logistical reason for why the X-Men, just stupid old revenge. I guess that targeting humans would have been too easy for Belasco, so he chose to bet his latest plan on pure hatred, just getting through. Good luck with that, sir. The narrative then takes us to Hammer Bay, Genosha, a small island nation off the coast of Madagascar. Genosha used to have a mutant slave population that was controlled by the ruling human class. However, in the context of this story, Magneto had just been given dominion over it by the UN at the end of the Magneto War crossover. While still recovering from its war-torn past, Magneto's iron-fisted rule has brought a measure of stability to the island. This is where we find Logan and Bobby Drake, Wolverine and Iceman respectively. The pair have come to scope out the situation. Logan isn't happy with Magneto having Genosha, while Iceman is more concerned for Polaris, who has moved to Genosha. Once again, we get more pages devoted to catching up, but this read smoothly. Logan and Bobby sound like themselves, their personal concerns feel personal, and while maybe we get a bit too much exposition, it doesn't bother me. Thomas has a lot of information to get across here, and he does so well, or at least better than in the opening. I think that this is due to Thunderbird having little to no personality and Magic's identity being a mystery still. There's just very little there for any writer to work with, and when comparing these two scenes, it shows. The rest of the issue is the Nagarai-possessed Banshee and Sunfire's assault on Iceman, Wolverine, and Polaris. But unlike the mad back-and-forth mess of last issue, every move here matters. Banshee and Sunfire's attacks are smart, as are the responses by our heroes. Thomas even has Wolverine suffering extra damage from Banshee's sonic scream thanks to his enhanced hearing, a detail that a lot of writers don't notice. Iceman tricks Sunfire with an ice globe, then he tries to knock him out by putting him into hyperthermic suspension, and shatters steel by generating below freezing temperatures. Polaris defends herself by pulling and liquidizing ambient metal from around them, then coating herself like Colossus for the fight. These are the best versions of these characters. They're experienced, they're smart, and they know how to fight. This battle was a blast for me. Pilgrim appears again, although with no mongrel to summon him this time. I'm assuming that Pilgrim can just teleport at will, which kind of makes all that crap jazz regarding the mongrel last issue pointless. I'm pretty okay with that. Pilgrim is a decently skilled mage, and we don't have a lot of pages to devote to killing mongrels or 169 people. His goal remains the same: thwart Belasco by killing somebody that he needs. Wolverine fights him for most of his appearance in this issue, but he's forced to flee when Sunfire lands a powerful blast on him. He then turns his attention to Iceman, threatening to kill him if Polaris Polaris's real name is Lorna Dane, in case you don't know, doesn't surrender. She does, Iceman is spared, and they both get their souls transformed into bloodstones. That's 3 down. The battle is lost, Magic teleporting in too late. Unsure of who she is or why she's pointing her sword at his friends, Wolverine leaps to their defense. Magic knows him and asks for him to trust her. He waits for a moment and then retracts his claws. They decide to team up, and Magic adds the 2 fallen X-Men to her collection. 2 more, and she'll need to start transferring some to Bill's storage system. Folks, this was pretty great. I'm totally impressed by Roy Thomas's work here. I really enjoyed this. Everyone felt right once we got to Genosha. The fighting was dramatic, suspenseful, and it made sense, and I am happy with it. Waller's artwork is fine. It's a bit more realistic than I tend to prefer. Characters are drawn on model, but there's a lack of refinement to his pages. They're cluttered, and to be fair, he has a lot to convey, and that leads to details blurring or going missing, or a panel lacking some potential impact. I continue to dislike colorist Tom Smith's work. Some scenes, notably the energy blasts, look good. Hell, the coloring on page 1 as the Nagarai exits the cairn looks great. But then I look at the fight between Iceman and Sunfire, and it's just all flat reds and blues. Blech. I would like to say, Mr. Smith, that I get it. He's colored 3 issues of a book that's going to be released in 1 month. I don't know how much lead time he had, or if he colors the final 2 issues as well. And another thing to keep in mind with this is the writing process. With Claremont plotting and 3 other authors doing the final scripts, it's not like the series had to be produced 1 issue a month, giving Mr. Smith a lot of time to finish his work. Assuming similar writing times, Wine, Thomas, and Louise Simonson, who scripts issue 4, could have turned all of their issues in 1 month. This explains why Tom Derenick only drew the first 2 issues, and why 3 other pencilers did the rest of the run. So, while yes, Tom Smith's coloring is not the best I've ever seen, I'm willing to cut him some slack given how potentially difficult the turnaround here could have been. You could also make the argument that if Smith couldn't turn in satisfactory work in a timely manner, then Marvel should have hired more colorists for this. And yeah, that is something that I won't cut slack for. As I just said above, Louise Simonson did the script for issue 4, and I'm pretty optimistic about this. I'm decently familiar with her X-Works, having read both her run on X-Factor as well as New Mutants. Simonson was also Claremont's editor for 4 years on Uncanny X-Men, so she's an author who knows her X-Men. Given how much of X-Factor she wrote, she should be pretty familiar with Jean Grey and Beast, Belasco's next targets in that issue. It's also been years since Simonson wrote them, though, so I'm a little nervous. But I am more hopeful than nervous, so let's do this. Issue 4 opens in Limbo, where Magic adds Wolverine's might to Thunderbirds. The trio beat back the latest wave of Nagarai and, once again, recap what's going on. But this time, Magic reveals a critical point of her plan. The whole reason she's been keeping the fallen X-Men in her soul sword is so that she can release them in Limbo, where they can survive for a time without their souls, for the final fight. The spell can only be used once, so she can't risk it until it's wholly unnecessary. She leaves the 2 men to defend Limbo and returns to Earth. On Earth, there have been some developments. 13 cairns have sprung up across the globe, and we're currently visiting the one in Rome. We aren't alone either, as Beast and Phoenix are there as well. Hank, doing his best Indiana Jones cosplay, asks about Jean's new costume. Her last outfit was a symbol of her life and time with Scott, she replies. With him dead, as he was at the time, she needed a change, something to look forward instead of back. While this isn't terribly important to our narrative, I have a point to make later, so I just wanted to bring it up. We will be back to this. Phoenix also informs Hank that she sent the remaining X-Men, Rogue, Cable, Gambit, and Danielle Moonstar, to watch some of the other cairn sites. Wondering why they aren't in this series? Well, there you go. Jean is also aware of the possessed X-Men and the attacks upon the others, although I don't know how or why. all of the characters involved are either possessed, are in Magic's Soul Sword, or defending Limbo. Not one of them attempted to contact Jean or send up some kind of mental shout for her to telepathically hear. Or call her. I guess someone could have just called her. My point is that no one did. Anyways, Phoenix senses a telepathic dead zone at the Sistine Chapel, so she and Beast head over. They discover the possessed Colossus losing a fight to Pilgrim, who Beast recognizes from their initial meeting. Content to kill anyone involved in this plot, Pilgrim jumps at the X-Men. This is particularly dangerous for Jean, who has lost her telekinetic powers during the Revolution. She's still a powerful telepath, yes, but that won't save her from hurled debris. Beast, who's not normally one for a physical fight, actually holds his own against Pilgrim pretty well. Beast is a character normally used for his mind, so this is kind of refreshing to see. As Colossus starts to wake up, Beast realizes that his odds are about to get worse. Phoenix, however, has a suggestion. She pulls Hank onto the astral plane, where they can have an entire conversation in milliseconds. She suggests that she uses her powers to optimize his neural net. This will allow him to move faster and overcome the sluggish functions of his own brain. Beast suggests that she just mentally attack their foes, but Jean is reluctant. Pilgrim's thoughts are so alien that she can't control them. Attacking Colossus could do permanent damage to Peter's mind. So, Beast takes Jean's offer. It's like a whole nother fight. Beast's strength is upped so much that he can crack Pilgrim's armored form. His reflexes are so fast, he can snatch the debris that Pilgrim hurls in mid-air and chuck them back. Above the fight, a possessed Nightcrawler watches gleefully. Unlike the rest of the possessed characters, this Nagarai seems to have a personality. All the rest of the demons were just predacious animals eager for the kill. This one, though, he smiles, he strategizes, he toys with magic after she teleports in. Given her use of black magic, the holy power held in the city rejects her. She's woozy and weak, while the Nagarai, hidden within the noble bodies of the X-Men, are undercover and thus unaffected. He fights well, but magic fights better, pinning him, her sword poised for the strike. But she can't. In that instant, he strikes, his own blade smashing through her armor. This moment of hesitation is important. Remember, when faced with Belasco in issue 2, she didn't hesitate to strike him down. But here, facing Nightcrawler, magic pauses. Why? Is this just loyalty to the X-Men, or is it something more? I mean, I'm pretty sure that Illyana ran into Nightcrawler at some point while she was a member of the New Mutants, but I don't think that she ever, interacted with him enough to, care about him, you know what I mean? So, this has to be a sign of something bigger, but I'm lost. Phoenix can hear Magic's fight, even if she's unaware of it. Desperate to end this, she links her mind to Pilgrim, Colossus, and Nightcrawler, and basically tries to overpower them. But their alien minds and corrupting influence overwhelms her. She would be the one trapped if not for Beast tackling her, snapping her back to awareness. Catching the brunt of that psychic assault, though, Beast is blasted unconscious. This gives Colossus the time he needs to steal Beast's soul, creating the fifth Bloodstone. Before Colossus can kill Beast's body, though, Magic hurls her sword across the plaza and into Beast. But the blade passes through his body, storing him inside. Having what they need, the Nagarai-possessed teleport out. Jean asks Magic if that's true, to which she replies no. They're demons, they lie. The sorceress takes Jean to Limbo and adds her to the ranks. Thunderbird and Wolverine have held the line, but Magic informs them that soon they'll face all of the Nagarai. While they fight, Magic has the job of stopping Belasco. Jean asks about her fellow X-Men. Can they be saved? Magic will try, but if it's a choice between them or the world... Well, I am torn on this one. It reads well, at least as well as Claremont's issue 1. Simonson's exposition feels a bit more formal when compared to Thomas's last issue. The voices are a bit more stiff. I liked the writing she did between Jean and Hank, though. They felt like the old friends that they are, and when together in battle, they trust each other and work well together. Her usage of their powers was pretty great as well. Like I said, it was fun seeing Beast kick some butt. But this issue barely used Colossus or Nightcrawler. And seeing how well Thomas used Banshee and Sunfire, it's a bit of a letdown to not see that kind of care here. I did enjoy that Magic got a teensy bit more personality here, just a smidge of who she really is. It's about time, given that we only have one more issue to wrap everything up and reveal her true identity. We also have another new artist, Aletha Martinez, inked by John Stanisi. I like Martinez's artwork overall. It's very European. It makes me think of Claudio Castellini. All of the characters, even the demons, are particularly muscular, their shapes defined by shadows, but not in just the typical superhero bulging muscles kind of way. Martinez, or perhaps her inker, Stanisi, puts a lot of small lines, doing a lot of shading and shaping with their line work. You know what? Martinez's artwork makes me think of Tom Rainey. That's who I was thinking of the whole time I was reading this issue. Okay. Tom Smith, still on colors, does a markedly better job this issue. There are a few panels that have empty backgrounds that get colored poorly, but in general I had way less problems with this than previous issues. The only real problem I have with the art is a small continuity error. Thunderbird gets a portion of his chest armor torn away in the fighting at the beginning of the issue, but in the next shot of him, it's fine. Now, yeah, Magic could probably fix his armor, but that's neither shown nor told, so I say it's an error. And on that error, we have one issue left. Claremont is back on solo duty, so let's see how he pulls this all in. Having acquired his 5 Bloodstones, Belasco declares victory. But the X-Men, and Magic, haven't given up yet. They recap the situation yet again. Then Magic leaves to begin the fight back. The remaining X-Men, Phoenix, Wolverine, and Thunderbird, hold the line against the Nagarai hordes. The two men battle on, while Jean confuses the Nagarai with illusions and supercharges her allies like she did with Beast last issue. While there isn't a lot here to comment on, I appreciate Wolverine and Thunderbird being able to cut loose. Wolverine is a natural fighter, but has spent a large portion of his life trying to control his inner animal. Thunderbird sits on the opposite end of the spectrum. He's new to this life of adventure and violence, but his plasma bolts are so dangerous that he must control them. Out of all the X-Men in this book, these two, and Jean, really, after a fashion, are the only ones who've struggled the most to control themselves. Being able to let loose must feel great. Except for Jean. Claremont makes a point of referencing her experience with the Phoenix Force and the dangerous hunger that such a freedom can lead to. As beautiful and kind as Jean is, she has her own set of inner demons to control. Outside Belasco's fortress, Magic summons the fallen X-Men: Archangel, Iceman, Polaris, and Beast. She explains that she needs them to draw out the possessed X-Men, thus leaving Belasco clear for her to confront. They do, and, guided by Beast's intellect, are off to a pretty good start. At the Limbo Mansion, fatigue and mental exhaustion, which Jean is absorbing from Logan and Neil, are starting to take their toll, which is when Pilgrim decides to show up. He's got Psylocke's head held by the hair in one hand, dragging her bodily from the mansion. How the hell did this guy get here? Like, I'll buy that he can teleport. Again, that's within his basic skill set. But Limbo wasn't just a location on Earth, it's a whole nother dimension. This should take more skill and power than just snapping a finger. Even Magic only has access because she's Limbo's ruler and has access to its naturally occurring stepping discs. The stepping discs, by the way, are portals in Limbo that lead to other locations and times. They're naturally occurring and random, but an accomplished spellcaster, or the ruler of Limbo, can control them at will. Pilgrim shouldn't have access to those, and we get no other explanation as to how he got here. Phoenix takes him on, using her telepathy to project illusions of having Wolverine's claws and Thunderbird's plasma. Pilgrim sees through her illusions quickly and has her in his grasp. Lightly scanning his mind, Jean sees that Pilgrim should be allied with them. How long will the Rutai stand against the Nagarai once they have control of Limbo? Her impassioned plea touches a nerve with Pilgrim. It reminds him of Wolverine, but she has more spirit. He spares her and flees, swearing to see her again once Belasco has been dealt with. Pilgrim travels to Beast's group. While they've been holding their own well, demonic reinforcements are on the way. Remember, these X-Men are soulless, and any willing demon can possess them. But Pilgrim's spells protect them, and, catching the possessed X-Men off guard, he downs them easily. The blows look like he's slashing his way through them, but the possessed have no injuries afterwards, so this is either a continuity error, an artwork error, or the blows were way less dangerous than it looks like. Things are looking good for Team Save the Earth. Not only are the X-Men holding their own, but magic has made it to Belasco's sanctum. As she approaches the Bloodstones, a sword slashes into her back. Belasco's been waiting, but magic isn't alone. Shadowcat emerges from her sword and immediately wants payback. But Belasco isn't worried. Shadowcat's powers are nothing to him. He grabs her by the neck and hefts her easily, shattering her soul form to reveal the true Shadowcat underneath. He brags of knowing her so well that he'll barely need any of his power at all to make this version of her real. But that's okay. His arrogance is what they were counting on. While Belasco gloated, magic moved over to the Bloodstones, and then she shatters them. The souls trapped inside are freed and return to their bodies. While frustrated, Belasco isn't too worried. Now that the spell has begun, it's self-perpetuating. It can't be stopped. Except by Beast. Using the power of science and reading a cue that no one gives him, he instructs the other X-Men in how to disrupt the spell. For the layman, they freeze Belasco's fortress, charge it using Polaris' magnetism, and then blast it with Sunfire's solar fire. Its physical form supercharged, and with magic striking its magical power grid at the same time, it explodes. This is luck. This is 100% luck on the X-Men's part. Well, yes, the possessed X-Men did regain their souls, and thus regained control of their bodies. Beast and the X-Men have no idea where magic is. They're supercharging this castle blind and run the risk of destroying magic as well. It is possible that, with the stakes being what they are, the X-Men aren't willing to risk failure, and so magic was deemed an acceptable loss. But that is so not something the X-Men do. And I'm not even sure if they know that Shadowcat is inside, fighting as well. I'd also like to point out that there is no reason why Beast would know that Belasco's spell is self-perpetuating, and that the only way to destroy it would be to disrupt the magical energy grids via science fiction. This whole climax makes no sense, but it's so rushed that it's hard to tell how little sense it makes. The fortress is gone. So are the Nagarai and their cairn. All that stands is the X-Men's limbo mansion and the X-Men. They're alive and they're whole, but their hearts and souls are scarred. They'll be okay, but it'll take some time. At the edge of the lawn is Pilgrim, watching them. Storm offers to Jean to take him out, but Jean says not to. Without his aid, they may not have beaten Belasco. I can't help but think that Pilgrim's turn could have been better handled. Why not have Jean win Pilgrim over in issue 4 during their first confrontation, thus bringing him into issue 5 as an ally? This would have freed up some story space, perhaps allowing for the climax to play out better and build more of a relationship with him as a character. Keep in mind, we've only ever seen Pilgrim as a villain, so even this temporary turn as an ally comes off as just a little bit weird. Magic and Shadowcat teleport in. Kitty invites Magic to join them, but she turns the offer down. Limbo needs its ruler, and, to be honest, she's outgrown any place that the mansion could have offered her. This is the first time that Colossus lays eyes on Magic, and he becomes agitated. Is this his sister, Illyana, somehow back from the dead? This wouldn't be the first time that an X-Man came back from the dead. Still apart from the rest of the team, Shadowcat tells Magic that they should tell them who she is. But Magic won't do it. In the world of magic, names have power. It's a small form of protection, yes, but it's the kind of edge that Magic needs against foes like Belasco. As the X-Men leave, teleporting out in a stepping disc, Nightcrawler wishes Amanda well, thus revealing Magic's true identity to be that of Amanda Sefton. Thank God we just made a huge deal about how important her not revealing her identity was. Way to bamf and blow it, Kurt. She smiles, thanking Kurt. Let him fight evil with his faith. She'll use her spells and sword. So who the hell is Amanda Sefton? Good question. Amanda Sefton grew up with Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler, and eventually followed him to the States. She became a flight attendant and began a part-time relationship with Kurt. The daughter of a powerful sorceress, Amanda grew into her own magical powers as the Day Tripper. Nightcrawler, Day Tripper, get it? She appeared a few times in Excalibur Volume 1, but her story was last left in X-Men Unlimited number 19. It was during that last adventure that Belasco was overthrown as a ruler, leaving Amanda alone to take his place. I actually just read that issue last year as part of my recently finished Excalibur Volume 1 collection, but it was so uninspired that it just didn't stick with me. I honestly didn't think anybody would ever reference that issue again. And I mean, in publishing terms, that was 2 years ago. Why are we touching on this now? I'm really amazed at the amount of research that Claremont put into this. I've come, in all my years, to expect Claremont to favor his own plots. I have a massive point to prove it, too, coming up, which consequently means he ignores the work of others. But that does not feel true here. Well, yes, Claremont does link this story back to the X-Men's original confrontation with Belasco, the majority of this is based around newer story elements. Claremont references Amanda's story in X-Men Unlimited 19, the fallout of the Magneto War crossover and its follow-up miniseries, Magneto Dark Seduction, and the X-Men's confrontation with the Rutai, which ran through X-Men number 71 to 75. And that story was in turn inspired by Wolverine Annual 1995. So I think it's pretty amazing that Claremont, and the other authors, worked so much established story into this one series. That doesn't mean that all of this is necessary, though. Pilgrim, for example, doesn't feel needed here. While he spent most of the series as an adversary, the last second turn feels unearned. He's literally just impressed by Jean Grey into switching sides. There's no character growth here. And while he defeats the possessed X-Men, I'd argue that Psylocke could do much the same. Claremont has maintained over the years that Psylocke likes action and violence. Backed up by her powerful telekinesis, she could have handled the possessed characters easily. This is why she got knocked out at the start of the book. I would also argue against Kitty Pryde starring in issue 1. This doesn't feel terribly necessary to the overall plot, but it does feel like an important piece of Kitty's narrative. Claremont has stated in interviews that his role for Kitty Pryde in the X-Men The End miniseries, that of the United States President, is his ultimate vision for the woman. Even in the X-Men's recent holiday special, the one page written by Chris Claremont has Kitty announcing that she'll run for office. And I explain all of that because it ties into my point about Claremont favoring his own plots. Claremont clearly establishes that Kitty is angry and no longer content among the X-Men. She wants the fighting to stop. She wants to be normal. She wants to have a real impact on the world. Fighting to defend it is necessary. But who cares if the world never changes? After this story, Kitty only appears in one more issue of X-Men, the opening salvo of Revolution, X-Men number 100, before she drops off the map for months. She only returns after the death of Colossus, and even then, that's just to tell the X-Men that she isn't coming back. Kitty's journey takes her to school in the Mechanics miniseries, and then to a Coyote Ugly-style job in Claremont's Extreme X-Men. He's clearly taking her on a journey outside of the X-Men, one that he perhaps envisioned eventually taking her to the White House. If that's true, then X-Men Black Sun predates all of X-Men Revolution. I have a bunch of evidence for this. Going into Black Sun, and knowing that it happens during the Revolution era, my greatest concern was where this would take place in continuity. But now, having read the whole thing, I believe that Black Sun actually happens before any of the events of the Revolution. Not only do we have Kitty worrying about her explicitly stated new haircut, something that isn't brought up at all in X-Men number 100, but Beast asks Jean about her new uniform. When they meet in Uncanny X-Men number 381, the first issue of Uncanny's Revolution era, he doesn't comment on it at all. I would also wager that this is why Neil Shara takes the codename Thunderbird. A lot of fans have wondered why Shara, who is from India, would take the codename of Thunderbird, as opposed to something more culturally appropriate. But if Claremont was already planning on doing the Black Sun arc, a celebration of the second generation, that means he would need at least a Thunderbird to fill that role. Now, I would argue that that's not necessary. Thunderbird has been dead for decades now. All of the dedicated X-Men fans know it, and we've had some pretty good stories come out of it. Most notably, the introduction of his younger brother, Warpath. Why worry about including him here at all? Or if you have to have a Thunderbird, why not have Warpath graduate to the X-Men, as Claremont was trying to have Danny Moonstar do, and take up his brother's code name? That makes a lot more sense to me than having Neil pick it up. Sure, it does mean that an Indian has the code name of Thunderbird, the original character being a Native American, but that feels less like honoring the original and more like a cultural slap to the face. Hell, why not have Belasco summon Thunderbird's dead body and use that as a proxy against the X-Men? Why not make Thunderbird's absence part of the plot? He could have filled the role of Pilgrim, overcoming the control of Belasco at the last second and saving the day. I think it's also important to note that Beast, Jean, Cable, and Gambit are all in the Eurasia area, and I know that's like half the globe, but bear with me. Their next appearance in Uncanny X-Men 381 puts them in Venice during Carnival, so they're already close to where we see them next. I think that X-Men Black Sun is the first story of Claremont's Revolution, and Kitty's first step away from the X-Men. And that alone makes this worth the price of admission to me. The downside to finding a place in continuity, though, is that Black Sun impacts on little else. The X-Men never referenced this miniseries, Pilgrim hasn't appeared since, and none of this seems to matter. The only real consequence of this is Amanda Sefton accepting the role of Magic, which is not only followed up on in her own miniseries, but years later in Claremont's 2014 Nightcrawler ongoing series. So while I do think that this miniseries has a place, I wouldn't say that this is necessary for an X collection. All that said, this still fails as a celebration of the second generation of X-Men to me. Issue 1 stars Kitty Pryde, the series' main hero is Magic, and our main group of heroes are mostly original Generation X-Men and an offshoot of the Nagarai. We're the second geners. They're our main villains. Instead of being about what makes them cool or interesting or important, all we focus on is their powers. And while this makes for an okay enough X-Men story, it has no focus. I don't associate Kitty Pryde, or really any of the second generation, with Belasco. This book has a big character transformation in the form of Amanda becoming Magic, but we don't see that journey, nor do we spend enough time with her to really get to know her and to make this journey mean something. The book even ends with an ad for another miniseries starring Magic herself. As such, this story feels weak and heartless. The structure is fine, but there's no character at the center of it. I do have to admit that I think the structure is pretty cool. Magic moves through the story using Limbo's stepping discs. I think this is why Magic arrives late to almost every encounter here. I think that issues 2, 3, and 4 all happen at the same time. The Nagarai simultaneously strike the X-Men, and Magic teleports in as soon as she finishes a fight. That's why she's always a step behind. But that creates a new problem. If Magic really can move through time, why not just teleport again and just go farther back? Because Magic, the concept, not the character, sucks. One last time, folks, I bamfin' hate Magic. Issue 5 is penciled by Pablo Raimondi and inked by Jason Martin and Team X Inks. I really dig Raimondi's modern artwork. It's both realistic yet animated, dark and moody. That sounds like a perfect match for a book about a demonic invasion, but Raimondi's art isn't there yet. Here, his work is bright and shiny. It's a superhero book through and through. His depiction of Pilgrim is perhaps the best in the series, but he's saddled with similar problems as the last issues. Some pages are so crowded by word balloons or small panels that the details blur together and they lack impact. Tom Smith stays on colors and we get his usual mixed bag of coloring. There's a 2-page spread of Magic, Thunderbird, Wolverine, and Phoenix rallying against the Nagarai that looks gorgeous. but it's preceded by a washed-out single-page image of Belasco and his allies. This is a book about demons and stolen souls. Where's the darkness? Where's the shadows? What I'd give for an artist like Mike Mignola or Sean Phillips or, hey, even Chris Bachalo. This book should be dark and moody and, oh geez, actually, why not just use Lionel Yu, who actually draws X-Men during Claremont's Revolution? I'd rather see the artist that did this book on that book and Yu over here. But yeah, it should be dark and moody, not bright and heroic. I do really enjoy the covers. All 5 covers for this series are painted by Vince Evans and are designed to fit together and form a single image. If you listen to the Heroes Reborn episodes, then you know that I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. Each cover has a bloodstone and features the characters that are focused on in each issue, which I like. It's a bit sad that there is so much crap on these covers that it hides the images. I suppose that's actually a pretty good metaphor for the book. There's good stuff in here, but it's buried underneath plot repetition, uneven writing, and a lack of heart. The idea of having 4 of the X-Men's most impactful writers on one book sounds really neat, but it doesn't really pull together well. At least we do get a new character out of it, and we're going to stick with her. Amanda Sefton steps into the solo spotlight as next week we cover X-Men Magic, issues 1 through 4. Everyone, there are a million podcasts vying for your time and attention, and I'd like to thank you for listening to mine. If you would like to get in touch with me to share a concern, request a series, compliment me, berate me, whatever you like, send me an email at cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Otherwise, thanks for listening.